Good evening. It's time for the Iman Report. It is Saturday, June 19th, and we are recapping UFC on ESPN 25. After I got a chance to eat dinner, watch the playoffs of hockey and basketball, now it's time to recap the fights and what happened today. In the main event, we had the Korean Zombie pretty much dominate Calvin Kattar, and the Korean Zombie dominating Dan 50K Ige in this one. And the judges had it. Two had it 49-46, one had it 48-47. Ige was pretty good on the striking, but where he lacked was takedown defense. Unfortunately, he could not handle the grappling of the Korean Zombie, and that's what made all the difference. Problem for Zombie, it's going to be very difficult for him to get another chance at a title shot right now. Granted, there's not a lot of, you've got going for the title here in the coming weeks, you got Volkanovski going up against Ortega, I think at UFC 265. So Volkanovski, or after that gets settled, you've got, unfortunately, Holloway got hurt, but it looks like they are going to rebook Yair Rodriguez and Max Holloway for the next title shot. Zabit probably finished in the UFC. So now the real question is, what is realistically next for the Korean Zombie? Maybe the loser, if Max Holloway were to somehow lose to, you could put, or should Volkanovski lose to Ortega? Volkanovski and Zombie would be a fresh matchup. Unfortunately, it looks like Ortega and Zombie have already fought. No need to see that again. Zombie won that one pretty convincingly. Another possibility is you could book Arnold Allen. That would be probably your next best option, besides maybe waiting for Josh Emmett, is maybe you get, this would be a really good test for Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen, a good, young, up-and-coming fighter in the UFC. Arnold Allen coming off a big win over and this is the fight Arnold Allen wanted. He did dominate Sodiq Yusuff. But honestly, Arnold Allen 16-1 in the UFC. He's won 10 straight. But what lacks for Arnold Allen is really beating a name, so to say. So that's going to be interesting to see how Korean Zombie would handle how Arnold Allen handles the likes of something of the Korean Zombie. That might be what could be the best matchup available at this time. So I'm going to go with that. Arnold Allen and Korean Zombie. That is what should be the next fight. As for Dan Ige, this isn't the worst loss in the world. EFC's proving maybe we're starting to see a ceiling of where Dan Ige is. But he's by no means finished in the UFC. But I do think maybe a step backwards is what's needed for Ige. Ige does need to work on takedown defense. He was very vulnerable in his wrestling tonight. He almost at one point got submitted by Zombie. So what should be next for Ige? Well, I think we have to go with probably Korean. I think Giga Chikadze. That would be a barn burner. That would be a good 5-round main event. Giga Chikadze. Giga is on a hot streak. We'd find out a lot about Giga going up against Ige. So I'm going to go Giga Chikadze versus Dan Ige. That's what should be next there. And that's what I'll go with for that one. Now on to the co-main event, where Sergey Spivak dominated Alexei Oleinik for the most part. Oleinik was good in the first round, then he faded in the second and third rounds. With Sergey Spivak, he should get a ranking after this win. But whether or not he's an actual contender is another question. His losses, though, are to top-ranked competition. Maybe not Walt Harris. Harris might be an okay fighter, but he usually lacks the IQ. And then his other losses to an improving Marcin Tybura. That was coincidentally his last loss. But he's gotten wins over Taito Ivasa, Carlos Felipe. Alexei Oleinik is a name, but not a big name. Oleinik, more of an elder statesman in the UFC. Ranked number 15, but I don't think that Spivak should be getting too much of a bump up in competition after that win. I think for Spivak, you go with number 14. Sergey Pavlovich is what should be next for Sergey Spivak. As for Alexei Oleinik, the guy is 43. He's been in the UFC for a long since 2013. Oleinik has lost 3 in a row. You go back even further, he's lost 5 of his last 7. His only 2 wins are to Fabricio Verdum and Maurice Green. Not exactly great names. So I think for Oleinik, this has to be the end of the road for... It'd be nice to get his 60th win. You could maybe give him a debutante or someone who's in jeopardy of being cut if you want to, but honestly, I think I'll go with that. I think maybe let him get his 60th win under the condition that he retires. If not, retirement is really what should be next for Alexei Oleinik. But if you give him maybe one more chance against a low-level fighter, yeah, maybe you give Boa Constrictor one last shot to try to get win number 60, because that is a special milestone. But with maybe a fighter who's not exactly, but against easy competition. Don't... Maybe you put him up against the loser of Taito Ivasa and Greg Hardy and go from there. I think that's what should be next if Oleinik wants to try one more time at getting win number 60. But if he gets 60, then he should retire. All right, next up, Marlon Chito Vera beats Davey Grant via unanimous decision in the rematch. This fight got 50 G's. This fight was exciting. It went the distance. Marlon Chito Vera proving that he's a top 15 fighter. Davey Grant, maybe not the best fighter, but he's not a slouch either. What I think should be next for Chito is a fight with... I'm going to go with the winner of Kyler Phillips and Rafael Assunção. is what should be next for Cheeto and what should be next for Davey Grant. This is his first loss in 4 fights. But Grant proved maybe he's not a top 15 fighter yet. But maybe he's a top 20, top 25 fighter. And maybe he should be fighting people a little higher up in the rankings. And I think that reward should be maybe the loser of Casey Kenny and Yadong Song. So I'll go with that. Fight before that, Bruno Silva knocks out, actually, Sang Woo Choi knocks out Julian Erosa via knockout in the first round. Choi starting to rattle off some wins at featherweight. He's won 3 in a row since his last loss to Gavin Tucker. Erosa was a jumping competition for Choi, and he passed with flying colors in this one. I do think maybe what could be next for Choi is a fight against maybe somebody who's debatably a top 15 in Alex Caceres. Caceres versus Choi, that would be fireworks. Book it. As for Erosa, this is his first loss since returning to the UFC, so no shame there. Maybe for Erosa, his next fight should be against Damon Jackson. Fight before that, Bruno Silva knocks out Wellington Turman in the first round. Turman now 1-3 in the UFC, not great territory. But as for Bruno Silva starting to climb the ladder in the middleweight division. Oh, Bruno Silva. He has won 5 fights in a row, his first win in the UFC. What should be next for Bruno Silva? Maybe book him with Gregory Robocop Rodriguez is what should be next. And as for Wellington Turman, that's, I think, what should be next for him. There's a fight with Jack Marshman. The loser of that fight ends up being unemployed. That's what we'll go with. Fight before that, the opener. Yeah, Matt Brown actually won a fight for once. Against Diego Lima, this was via second round knockout. What I don't like about the win, though, is the fact that means Matt Brown has no plans of retiring. I honestly would like to see Matt Brown put the gloves in the octagon, call it a career. That's what I honestly would have preferred to see. but that's unlikely to happen. What is next for Matt Brown? But give him props. He snapped just a 2-fight losing streak. But I guess if he wants to keep being gatekeeper, I suppose you can let him continue to be a gatekeeper. What's next for him? I think the winner of Michel Prazeres and Shavkat Rakhmonov is what should be next. As for Diego Lima, give him the loser of that fight. That's what I'll go with. Now on to the prelim card. Nikolai Neguraminow beats Alexa Kamur via split decision in a very exciting... The prelims were very exciting tonight in this one. In what was a very close fight. He now improves to 10-1 in the UFC. Currently ranked 78 at light heavyweight. What should be next for Nikolai is a fight against go with the winner of Prachnio and Villanueva is what should be next for Nicolau. As for Kamur, Alexa Kamur now 1-2 in the UFC, might get one more fight. Loser leaves town with I go with Dan Spontano, not him. The loser of William Knight and Fabio Charant, what should be next for Alexa Kamur. Fight before that, Verna Jandiroba beats Kanako Murata via TKO due to Murata suffering an arm injury. What is next for Jandiroba? Unfortunately, during this fight, I kind of fell asleep a little bit thanks to that awful heat today. See if Angela Hill is booked or not. All right, the winner of Hill and Torres is what should be next for John D. Roba. And as for Murata, I think Brianna Van Buren's what should be next for Murata. We'll go with that. Fight before that, Chaos Williams beats Matthew Semmelsberger via unanimous decision. Chaos Williams looked great in this fight. He gashed Semmelsberger in this fight. I think Chaos is ready for a step up in competition at this point. I think what should be next for him is maybe the winner of Nick Dalby and Tim Means is what should be next for Chaos Williams. I'd like to see what Chaos Williams does against an experienced fighter at this point. I think this would be a really good test to really get a gauge on how good Chaos Williams is against an experienced fighter. Semmelsberger, this is his first loss in the UFC. Ranked 57 at welterweight, so he is going to have to take a bit of a step back. And I think Takashi Sato is maybe that step back for Semmelsberger in his next fight. Fight before that, Josh Parisian beats Rock Martinez via split decision. What is next for Parisian? Parisian ranks 66. I think the winner of Sherman and Porter is what should be next. As for Rock Martinez, Martinez 0-3 in the UFC. You know what that means. Bye-bye. Adios. Yes, Rock Martinez should, and needs to be cut. We will go with that. Fight before that, Rick Glenn beats Joaquim Silva via knockout in Rick Glenn's return to 155 division. Rick Glenn ranked 80 at lightweight. what should be next for Rick Glenn. I think we'll go with the winner of Hadzovic and Medeiros is what should be next for Rick Glenn. And what should be next for Joaquim Silva? Joaquim Silva now lost 2 in a row, 1 and 3 in his last 4. Not exactly a great spot to be. His next fight should be against another fighter on a losing streak, probably in a loser leaves town fight. And I think that will be Alan Patrick, whose recent loss became a no contest. So, yeah, I think we go Alan Patrick versus Joaquim Silva. The loser of that fight gets cut. And then in the first fight of the night, Casey O'Neill beats Lara Procopio via technical submission. Casey O'Neill now 2-0 in the UFC. And she is 7-0. Currently ranked 28 at flyweight. I think next for her is the winner of Tracy Cortez and JJ Aldrich is what should be next. As for Lauren Procopio, the loser of Kim and McCann is what should be next. And that will put a bow on UFC on ESPN 25. And now we move on to UFC Fight Night next week. It is a matinee fight card next week. UFC Fight Night 190. This fight, the prelims start at, make a note of this, 10 o'clock. Main card starts at 1 o'clock. Main event is Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov. This should be a really good fight. You have Ovin St. Preux moving up to heavyweight. As this will be the last fight card before the big one after the 4th of July between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier 3. Well, everybody have a good weekend. Have a good Father's Day tomorrow. Be good to your family. Take your dad out to breakfast. Have an awesome week. We'll all be back next week. Good night, everybody.